No one saw this coming as we have multiple new Toronto Maple Leafs updates as it pertains to both their lineups heading into tomorrow, but also some shocking updates surrounding a couple of Leafs that have been out for a very long time. I'm going to break that down and discuss what this means going forward. But before we get into it, if you're a part of the percentage who aren't subscribed to the channel, make sure to hit that subscribe button. This is the place to be for daily Leafs content. We will be live following tomorrow night's game against the Panthers and what is by far the biggest game of the season. But there's a lot to go over today, and the Leafs practice today, and we got some shocking updates surrounding both their lines and some injury updates. Let's not waste any more time. Let's dive right into it. We're going to start right into the lines today because there's a lot of other updates. You can see some of them here. This is wild. So, you look at the normal lines. You have Nyes, Matthews, Marner, McMahon, Tavares, Nylander, Lawton, Domi, Yarncroke, and then Holmberg, Camp, Florent. So, very interesting. They're moving some people around a little bit here. You now, of course, have Yarncroke back on the third line, which is interesting. Nick Robertson remains out. We'll dive in a couple of the other guys later. Darius, what are your thoughts on these lines in particular? Because you look at, again, the top two lines remain the same. They've been juggling, Craig Berube, that is, has been juggling the bottom two lines a lot. I love that they're keeping Lawton on that third line. He's looked a lot better. He's been playing a lot better. But this is the biggest game of the season tomorrow, and it was very interesting to see, and I was very curious to see what adjustments Craig Berube was going to make to the lines here.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're going to go from the top to the bottom because the most moves are made on offense, but the first two lines to me are pretty solidified at this point. I think that's what the lines are going to be heading into the playoffs. And one thing that I've really liked so far this season is, yes, the blender has been out to a degree, but once Craig Berube finds something that he likes and works for the team, he sticks with it. We didn't really see that with the past administration. Like we were seeing, line combinations being jumbled, put in the blender up until the end of the season, like the last couple games. So I do like that they have pretty much solidified the first two lines there. Now, the third and the fourth line, Yarncroke is back up on the third line. We saw a little bit of that over the weekend as well. And then the fourth line is pretty interesting. Lawton, obviously, still on that third line left wing as well with Domi. I think Domi's been playing well, but we also have to keep in mind Pacioretty. How does he factor into everything here? And I wonder if Yarncroke is, they're just trying to see what he has in a third line position, because if he doesn't have it, maybe he plays on the fourth line heading into the playoffs, because I do believe, this is getting closer and closer to the playoff lineup because Robertson is out tonight. I think Pacioretty will be in come playoff time, not tonight that is, but come playoff time, and will make a difference. So it's going to be very interesting. But yes, tomorrow they play. Sorry, not tonight, but yes, the fourth line, I think they're just trying to see what they have in certain players right now and where they fit. That's why they keep moving certain guys around just to get the best lineup possible heading into the playoffs. And I think that's a good thing. And then when you look at the defense, pretty much the same, right? And Benoit had a really good bounce back game. So did OEL, and that was good to see. So want to see how these lines continue to get comfortable with one another, these pairings. And then obviously Stolarz playing his former team. He's playing the Florida Panthers again. He has an opportunity to bounce back because he hasn't necessarily played the Panthers too well this season, right? Even dating back to the first matchup. So it's going to be interesting to watch that as well.
Yeah, two Leafs going up against their former team tomorrow, Stolarz and, of course, Steven Lorenzen. You mentioned it, the third line, Yarncroke being back up on that third pairing, third line. Sorry, we've seen that a bunch the weekend, a little bit throughout the season as well on the weekend. However, another storyline here that's not talked about a lot, David Kampf seems to have kind of stolen that fourth line center spot. There was a period there even last week or a couple weeks ago where he missed 3 straight games due to being healthy scratched by Berube. Now it seems that Holmberg's the guy, on theory, on the outside looking in, but when Pacioretty, what we think is inevitably going to return for the playoffs, it's going to be interesting to see whether he's on the third line or the fourth line, unless I think there is also a chance. Let's say the Leafs come out and they play really well over these last 8 games and they beat the Panthers twice, and Holmberg and Yarncroke are playing really well heading into the final few games. I don't think they necessarily would change that, even if Pacioretty's available. I think it's going to be very much who's playing great. If Yarncroke and Holmberg continue to do cardio and not really play well, it's not like Callie is a proven playoff performer. He's been probably quite bad in the playoffs over his career, so I think he's somebody who could be taken out there. And as it pertains to the blue line, I mean, they've been putting it in the blender anyways. We saw it a lot in the last game. They changed it up. Carlo had a bit of a rough game, but I still think he played fine. 5 block shots, sorry. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens there. But let's dive into a couple other things. Also, like you mentioned, Stolarz is going to be the goalie against Florida, which, makes some sense. And because there's 2 big games, I believe tomorrow and then on April 8th. The 8th, there's going to be another game against the Panthers. Who starts that game? Because those are the 2 most important games. And the Tampa Bay Lightning, you can probably start to infer a little bit who's going to be the game 1 starter based on that. However, this is some other big news here. Max Pacioretty and Jano Hakanpää are both participating in the Leafs practice this morning, and both are on the injured list. And it was a 15-minute practice, so they're probably going to, skate again tomorrow. Not necessarily practice, but skate again tomorrow. This is going to be interesting now because I don't think Yanni Hakanpää factors in necessarily. Maybe instead of Philip Myers being like the seventh defenseman, sorry. But Max Pacioretty, like we mentioned, we know that all signs point to him returning to the playoffs, especially Craig Berube said he thinks he's going to be. Him skating now, I think he's healthy, but because of the roster situation and the salary cap, they can't bring him on right now, even though that would be, I mean, I think having him play the last 5 games this season would go a long way for him actually returning for the playoffs.
Yeah, I think that's exactly the case. I think he's healthy now. The fact that he's skating with the team and obviously wearing a regular jersey, it's not like he's in a no contact jersey or anything. I think he's ready to go, but he can't because of the current, makeup of the roster, the salary cap, all that stuff. But he can return in the playoffs. So two different cases here with Pacioretty and Hakanpää. I think Pacioretty, given the opportunity, as soon as game one comes around in the playoffs, he will be in the lineup. I think that's the plan for him to play the first game and to play, unless he's not playing well, right? But he knows what he needs to bring to the lineup. So I assume he's going to do that and be playing well. So I think he's going to be there in the playoffs. Hakanpää is a different story. He hasn't played almost all year. Yes, Pacioretty's dealt with injuries, but he's played quite a few games, right? He's gotten into games and he's played pretty well for the majority of the time he's been at Toronto Maple Leafs. So Hakanpää is a little bit different. He's played, I think, 2, maybe 3 games all season. So I can see him getting into the playoffs if there's an injury. I'd rather him in a playoff position here in one of the pairings or part of one of the pairings rather than Myers. And I think that he has more playoff experience with a team like Dallas who has gone far before. So, and a big body. Obviously, you can throw the body. So I think that he's just getting ready for the playoffs too, but I don't think he's going to be injected into the lineup right away. There has to be an injury or something has to happen for him to get into the lineup, but I think he's going to be ready to go. But two different cases. I think Pacioretty's pretty much penciled into, a third line position here in the playoffs. Just depends which wing. And then, Hakanpää is a little bit of a different story, but I think that he's just going to be waiting, getting ready to go to play in the playoffs if he is called upon.
Yeah, and something to note as well. I mean, Pacioretty is on a 1-year deal. It was a PTO turn to 1-year deal. He's on I mean, you could say he's on the tail end of his career regardless, especially with injuries. I don't think he'd be ramping up like this and actually practicing a ton if he wasn't guaranteed to play at least some game because it's not like he's with the team beyond this year. He wants to win. He wants to be a contributor. And it is going to be very interesting to see how they actually, I mean, that's the big conversation going into the playoffs. I don't think it's the top 2 lines because this year we know what they're going to be. Kind of similar to last year with Bertuzzi on the top line, but there were some question marks with Nylander's migraines, Matthews injury, all these different things where, Matthews missed a game. However, this year, I think we kind of know the top 2 lines. It's the bottom 6. It's going to be very interesting. And of course, the blue line pairings. The Leafs can officially clinch a playoff spot tonight. If the Canadians lose to the Panthers, we do not want that to happen. We want the Canadians to beat the Panthers and the Blue Jackets lose to the Predators. That one would be nice. Ideally here, Canadians win, Blue Jackets lose, the Leafs clinch. The Leafs are going to make the playoffs regardless. But for the out-of-town scoreboard, Canadians are coming off a fantastic win, and obviously we had a long discussion in the live stream about who you would rather play if you're the Leafs, win the Atlantic and play either Ottawa or Montreal, or would you rather, of course, go, or whoever else maybe sneaks in, the Rangers, Islanders, all these different things. But regardless of that, Canadians, we want them to win the night. I think you want to take the Atlantic Division, and let us know down below what opponent you would prefer. Because I know Darius is on the side of preferring the Lightning. I would prefer, even though it's probably against popular belief, I think winning the Atlantic and playing Ottawa would be better there. But it's going to be interesting, and I'm going to be paying very close attention to that Panthers game. If the Canadians win today, that is huge for the Leafs, because then, of course, you're still 3 points up, but you have another game in hand there. So it's going to be interesting. They also have been working on the penalty kill as well with the power play. Special teams have been fantastic. Shout out to Lane Lambert and, of course, Mark Savard. Any final thoughts, Darius? It is going to be a huge, huge game, and it's going to be one that tomorrow is, I mean, it's as close to a playoff game as you can possibly imagine. And down the stretch here, you have to play well, and a huge storyline is, of course, the goaltending as well.
Yeah, there's a couple things. I mean, heading into tomorrow's game, like you said, it's like a playoff game, and you want to stay ahead of the Panthers. You want that first position, not just because of who you're playing in the playoffs, which obviously that does determine, but going into the second round, if you make the second round, you get home ice advantage. You can almost guarantee that you'll have home ice advantage. Or, depending if Washington goes to the Eastern Conference Final, if the Leafs go to the Eastern Conference Final, you might have home ice advantage still. So you want that first spot in the Atlantic Division. Just lock that down. You're in a good spot right now. Just secure that, right? And obviously, it might prolong the Leafs actually locking up a playoff spot if the Canadians do beat the Panthers again tonight. But the Leafs are going to make the playoffs. It's going to happen at some point. They are going to lock up that playoff spot, but I think you want that first position. And of course, the special teams have been very good. So, as of late, at least. So want to see that continue. And last thing to note too, OHL playoffs are happening right now. Ben Danford is playing for the Oshawa Generals, a Leafs prospect. If you want to go check him out, they're playing Brampton. So it's a very local series if you're in the GTA, home and away. So if you want to go check out some of those games, you get to see a glimpse of one of the Leafs prospects in action there in the playoffs. But should be exciting as well. But just wanted to mention that. But yeah, the next couple days are going to be crazy. The fallout of tomorrow night's game is going to be insane as well. And we'll have you covered here on the channel.
Yeah, keep an update on the out of town scoreboard. Also, shout out to Bobby McMahon. Absolutely huge. And he's going to be someone that the Leafs desperately missed last year in the playoffs, goal scoring ability. Let's hope it's a different turnout this year. But that'll wrap it up. Thank you guys for watching. See you later.